I hope it's going to prove to be an excellent webinar on the topic of oceans apart, practices apart. Does having multiple offices around the world or across a continent or even across one nation mean that we inevitably end up having inconsistencies, issues, or are they just challenges and things that we can rise to across those different jurisdictions? On today's panel, we're lucky to have the great and the good. I'm going to go around and ask people to introduce themselves. I know your photos are on screen here as well. Gillian, your top left and your top of my screen is here as well here. If you could give us a quick introduction, that'd be great. And maybe tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at BCLP.
I'm Gillian Ward. I'm the Global Chief Marketing Officer at BCLP. I've been at this firm for about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I was with another US law firm, and prior to that, I was with a Canadian law firm in similarly international roles. So under my remit is the proposal team, the business development team, Marcoms, brand, all the things that you would expect. But probably most relevant for this discussion goes back beyond my legal career, when I was in engineering and VP of sales for an international engineering firm who lived and died by pitches and proposals and process and control and client focus. So I've tried to, over the 3 firms I've been with, bring some of that thinking into this world, which is quite different in this way. That's me.
That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that introduction as well. Matthew, would you mind giving us a quick introduction? Tell us who you are, what you do, and also, please can you take this opportunity to plug your book?
Thanks, Simon, and hi everyone. Nice to be able to have this opportunity to talk about a very juicy topic. So I'm Matthew Fuller. I'm the head of business development at White & Case. I've been at the firm for 10 years. And I've spent the majority of my career though in big law, working in marketing for law firms, 31 years in total. Always with big international firms. So this is right, very much up my street, this kind of discussion. And as has been alluded to, sort of pitching is, I actually really like pitching. A lot of people don't. I don't do a lot of it these days, but I actually love the thrill and the passion that goes with bidding and winning work. And as such, I've written a book. This is actually the second edition. The first edition was published in 2017. It's called Strategic Tendering for Professional Services. I wrote it with Tim Nightingale. It's a kind of practical guide, cradle to grave, on how to do pitching. We felt there was a gap in the market specifically for professional services. It's for partners, BD people, clients, procurement people, and we based it a lot on interviews with general counsel, as well as talking to colleagues, clients, and what have you. So it's on Amazon through Kogan Page, the publisher, and I'm happy to talk about it, or contact me if you'd like to know more about it.
Great. I've yet to read it, but it's in my basket at the moment. So we can provide a link afterwards as well, Matthew. I think,
of course, yeah.
One of the Pinnacle people recently took it to a conference that our next guest was at as well. Roy, you were at LMA in Las Vegas, obviously, as well. If you can introduce yourself, tell us a bit about Clark Hill, what you do, and that'd be great.
I was, and I love doing these things with marketing people because we're not afraid to market ourselves. Well done, Matthew, as well as the places we work. Lawyers, keep that in mind when you hire us. We have hustle, and that's why. No, it actually benefits you that we do these things. So just remember that. I'm Roy Sexton, Director of Marketing at Clark Hill. I've been here 4 years. I'll be the voice of kind of the marketing side of the house and how we support these processes along the way. I have been in marketing, legal marketing, for the better part of a decade. I'm president-elect, as you mentioned, or were alluding to, Simon, of the Legal Marketing Association. I'm very honored by that. I have a bit of a checkered past, and like Gillian, I'm not saying she has a checkered past. I worked in healthcare for a decade. I worked at Deloitte for a hot minute, and similarly have tried to take the lessons of those kind of more process-oriented industries and apply them to legal, which doesn't always have the willingness to embrace that kind of thinking and intentionality. So I look forward to this conversation.
Thanks for that, and thanks for all of you for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. Unless my brilliant people in the background have got another slide for me, I think I'm going to crack on with the first question, if that's all right. And really, that is going to be, Gillian, I'm going to come to you. Is this the key topic here? You know, this idea of this, the fact that there are differences culturally in different places and things that we have to manage through the role of the CMO. Is it a big issue? Is it always on your radar? Is it something that, you know, kind of keeps you awake at night? Oh, I think you're muted again.
I'll take myself off. There we go. I'm trying to avoid the background noise here. Yeah, I think it's always on my mind from a cultural difference, both from the lawyer's perspective that we're working with, who have different views of this particular process, but also from the client perspective too, you know, who the client is, in what market, why are they at this? And I make a distinction between pitches and proposals quite clearly. I'm thinking more about the proposal size in this conversation. You have to be aware of it. No two clients are the same, no two markets are the same, and frankly, no two internal clients are the same either. And that makes it that bit of a dance. But I do think, you know, technology is an enabler in controlling that, as is process, even though in this profession, the desire for process and control is pretty low. But once we've worked with teams, whether they're transatlantic or in one jurisdiction, and applied those processes and the tools that we have, they become quite enamored with the idea of some control over what's happening, but it's focused on what the client's asking you for. It's not just for control's sake.
No. Do you feel as though you've been making progress on this subject matter since you joined BCLP?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, now we have a clearer understanding, particularly of those large multi-jurisdictional proposals that we're working on, or panels that needed some organization and some central control, and it wasn't there before. So we've definitely made some progress. What I'd like to focus more on now going forward is, well, I feel like we've got the systems in place, is sort of enabling that sales mentality. A proposal is a sales document. It's not a marketing document, and moving that level of sort of thinking and understanding along. I mean, it's a busy part of my team. It's also a big part of the lawyer's world too.
That is brilliant. Thank you, Gillian. I think there's going to be a stampede to your door in the short future with other CMOs asking if you can help them, or at least you know, put an arm around their shoulder about what they're dealing with there. Roy, is it an issue for predominantly your firm? You've got Mexico, you've got Ireland, but predominantly the firm is a national practice. Is that fair to say?
That is correct. Yeah.
You can have similar kind of challenges, but on an intra-office kind of basis instead.
We do, and I think, you know, this also pulls on the thread of the way our firms continue to grow and come together. And they, at least in our instance, but I think in many others, they have come together by acquisition and combination with other pre-existing organizations. And so you also have those unique paths that people continue to want to follow, because they think they worked well for them, and you have to show them through data and outcomes that actually, by centralizing the efforts, by collaborating, you are more likely to win the business and win more of the business than you used to in the past. I mean, it's interesting to me that in wooing these organizations to become part of the larger, I'm a Star Trek fan, so the collective, I sound like the org, but you know, to woo people to that, we talk about the promise of, you're going to have this deep bench strength and all the buzzwords that people use. You're going to be able to draw on all this. But when they are faced with actually what that means, they're always like, well, I don't have to change, right? Well, no, if you want the benefit of this larger organization, you have to have a quarterback on the play. I don't use sports metaphors. Why I use that one, I don't know. But that's what I have found interesting. And I think in 4 years, we've come a long way. My boss, Susan Hearn, who's our Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer, and she is in Dublin, and Megan McKeon, my peer, who heads up the business development side, and I think we've done a nice job. And I think the other thing to do when you're doing the work Gillian does, take that victory lap back around to the others who might not have come on board yet. Show them why it's working and how it's working. So you, again, it's not control. I don't want to control. I barely want to control myself. But I do want, if we're going to put energy and resources into something, I want it to be effective. So follow the recipe book that my analogies, I'm just pulling them from left and right, but you know, follow the recipe book that works, and you're going to work smarter, not harder. Don't pull against us.
I don't think I realized until I was doing the US report quite how different it is office to office in the States as well. I think Gillian, we've alluded to this in the prep as well. But I mean, Clark Hill, I just didn't realize that, you know, an Austin offering might be completely different from a Denver offering, and that practice is as different as it might be from European jurisdiction to European jurisdiction.
You've got the region, they're just the natural regional differences. I mean, Texas to Michigan to California, these are three very different cultures generally, and let alone the East Coast. But then you also have the legacy cultures and what they had and what they used to do, and that maybe not everybody who came over was thrilled that the organization has now become part of something larger, and so they're kind of pulling against that change until they realize that actually that change is going to benefit them.
Maybe Matthew, I was going to ask you, Matthew, if that's something you can pick up on, that idea of, you know, being in the London office, of traditionally a kind of US firm, but it's clearly had a major push in London over the last 20 years. Any thoughts on this here? Is that how's it going in terms of London as part of the broader kind of global footprint?
Yeah, I mean, I think although my firm is a sort of New York heritage firm, actually the leadership in the firm is quite diffused. There isn't like a sort of mothership where
Right.
there is in certainly some of the Magic Circle firms. So I don't feel that so much, to be honest with you. I feel, going to the original question, I completely agree with both Gillian and Roy, what they've said. You know, it's very much uppermost in one's mind the whole time, because you have to be sensitive to these things. But what I would say is something I've sort of noticed, you know, throughout my career, is that when you go to a lawyer and you start a conversation, wherever that lawyer is or whatever they do, I so often hear, the thing is, Matthew, we're different. Okay, that's what you. And of course, everyone's different. The Paris office is different. The capital markets practice is different. The tax practice is different. The energy practice, you know, everyone's different, and that's to be celebrated. But that doesn't mean that you don't do something, or that there isn't a way of collaborating, as I think Roy said, and of having some basic structures, and the core principles are the same. So much of what we offer is life skills ultimately, but it's often said to me as a way of not doing something or not conforming, and that's actually a bad way to start a conversation. And it should be, we as marketeers, we're listening, and we understand that everyone's different and there are different nuances, and as Gillian says, different clients want different things. Absolutely. And we have to start on that basis, but we then have to move very swiftly on to say, right, how can we make this work with what our firm is trying to do, and it's and aligned with our business goals and strategy, and of course ultimately what the client wants.
Intermittently, I've tried to work with personal trainers over the years, and it's never caught. And I do the same thing. Well, I'm different. No. Yeah. If you exercise and stop eating Twinkies and eat a salad every once in a while, you'll lose weight, Roy. And I think that we know this is human nature. And I loved what you said, Matthew.
I think that really resonated.
I'm different, so leave me alone. No, You're not that different.
I think there's reasons and excuses, aren't there? So it's a balance between, you know, are they genuine reasons, or are they profit at something else instead? Okay, on the process point, Gillian, maybe you can start us off on this one again, if that's okay as well. I was just thinking about, how do you keep up to date with all the demand that's happening across the firm in terms of on the practices, who's busy, who's not, the supply and demand aspects of the kind of business and winning new business? How do you stay on top of that, you know, footprint of your size?
Right. So the business development team, so the structure is, there's a business development team who are both practice, and then another team who are sector and client oriented. There's an operations team, there's a communications team. Generally, everybody fits into those three. I look at the BD team, the equivalent to Matthew's team, as being the ones who should be the closest to the business. You know, my expectation is that those BD managers and those BD directors know what's going on in the practices. They have annual business plans we're moving towards, and they have target clients within those. And that behind the scenes, the research group and the pitch and the proposal group are getting themselves organized, ready to hit the button when one of those opportunities lands. So we're not scrambling to find, you know, our latest experience or who knows people in that context. So getting that organized across a platform like this is a challenge, to be sure. And in the absence of centralized systems, things like an experience database, and a pitch and proposal software that can play the time zones as well. I think that's very important across firms that have got multiple time zone jurisdictions. It's hard to stay on top of everything, to be perfectly honest. I try to stay up on the major opportunities that are in flow right now, all our panels, where we're at in the schedule with them, not only when they're coming up for renewal, but what have we been doing since we were appointed to that panel? Have we expanded the work? Because there's usually a connected practice that lands that work in the first place, but have we expanded beyond that? So we've put various sort of ticker systems in place so I can see what's going on. And if necessary, I can jump in and help. But the BD team really takes the lead on it. And that's who I lean in on to tell me what's going on, what's coming new in the pipeline. When we've got our target clients and we get a new proposal opportunity, my assumption is the marketing has been done to that client.
Right.
And the client is now in that position to buy from us. And if that's the place where I can come in and help the BD managers get the lawyers organized around that sales mentality, I think that's a good use of my time at that point.
Brilliant. Matthew, any thoughts on that in terms of keeping an eye on what's going on around the business?
Yeah, again, I agree with Gillian. What Gillian says, and our structure, just by the way, is identical to Julian's. And yeah, it's challenging, obviously, you know, with 45 offices and 5,500 people at White & Case, trying to keep on top of it. You can't, basically. Of course you can't. Let's be honest. So it's a lot of it. For me, it's about delegation. It's about having senior people around me who I talk to all the time, who are feeding things up to me, and it's that they know what are the key triggers of things that need to be discussed. But I would say what's absolutely essential is the ability to be agile and flexible. And that's where I think you can get the winners and losers in our world, because if you're ahead of the game and you're ready for it, you can move in quickly and you know, get the opportunity. And that's what I'm particularly looking out for. And these are very uncertain times, as we all know. And the way we have set up our team, aside from the BD folk who are sitting in the practices, looking after them, we also have a sort of agile, fungible central team that are there doing the kind of back office type work, but we can move them around according to where the pressure of the work is, and where the spikes are and where the opportunities. And that for me is absolutely essential. And that's what I find helps us enormously in keeping ahead.
So is that a new development to have that kind of?
We started about 5 years ago, but it's grown quite considerably now. So we have the team now based in all the major time zones.
Amazing. Gillian, any thoughts on that? Roy, any thoughts on that approach?
It's that centralization, but yet the ability to come down into the local or the specific practice needs. I think sometimes firms go too far with that centralization, and it'll come back to bite you at the end of the day. That agility that Matthew referred to, I mean, that's hard though. That means, you know, you're going to have to be able to pivot at any one time. I do think playing the time zones is key to keeping the ball moving. There's nothing more frustrating than a partner knowing that nothing's happened on their document for 12 hours because the person they were working with went to bed, and yet it's due in 15 hours. You're creating fire drills for yourselves as service providers that are sometimes unnecessary, but changing that culture, it's not easy, I know that, but I do think it's the job of the leaders in our functions to think about that, how to maximize the platform you've got to limit that frustration level for the partners.
And I think and we do have a question in the chat around size of our BD teams and how responsibilities are divided, which I think both you, Gillian, and Matthew did articulate. So I'll take a swing at it from our side as well. We have gone through a process of centralizing from decentralized. Again, we sort of inherited these other teammates through the acquisition of the other firms. And I think when firms grow as we have, it's kind of like my husband and I, we bought a very large home 15 years ago that we really weren't able to afford to furnish. So we kind of worked with what we had, and then we, but we didn't have the resources to go in and do everything right. Now we finally, 15 years later, are able to do to that house what we'd always wanted to do. And I think we have 20 people on our team, and Clark Hill, I think, thinks we're swimming in marketing people. Anybody else looking at a 650 attorney firm with 27 locations and only 20 people on their marketing team would be like, really? So, you've got that cognitive dissonance that you're trying to navigate, because the attorneys don't really want to take more resources and apply them to marketing or business development, because they know at the end of the day that means less money in their pocket at the end of the year. But if they don't invest properly, they aren't going to make that money that's going to yield the profit. But we know that as business people, and I don't mean to take a slight to attorneys. That concept doesn't quite always seem to stick. And so you have to take the moment when they have pain points to educate them why the centralization that we did last year actually benefits them, because we now have people that are cross-trained, that yes, they have specific job duties, but any one of them can pick up other things, maybe not do them well as the specialist, but in the moment they can help. And that then also means, and this comes from my healthcare background, I had to be ready to go into the ER, not to scrub up, but to kind of, they always had all of us ready to be able to wear different hats at any given moment. And I think that then necessitates the manager and the leader of the team to get your team out of their mindset of not my job, because I think we do tend to find a lot of talent at the lower, I don't want to say lower, but the entry level moments of a marketing team that don't really understand your job can be what you make of it. Even in a very sophisticated, well-oiled machine, being able to do that extra thing, learn that extra skill is going to benefit your career, and you will move up the ladder. And so when you give people that sense of specialization and you communicate to the firm, there are people who are learning a task. You want them to do that, and you want them to do that for 27 offices. You don't want a 20-something generalist that you're paying $50,000 to try to do all of your marketing tasks. So let's let someone learn a task, just like you as an attorney learned a practice area. But by the same token, everybody on the team, please don't say, oh, not my job, when an attorney calls, because they're never going to call us again. Find the ability to help them or get them to the person on the team that does, and be sensitive to the fact that you have attorneys 3, 6, 12 hours different. And we know attorneys don't give us a week's notice on anything. They wait until the day before. So we're never going to change that. So we need to be agile. And it's fun when it works. It's maddening when it doesn't. But when you kind of reach that sweet spot, and I think we have, knock wood for the moment, where the attorneys see the benefit of the centralization, but they realize no one has left them behind, you're in a good place.
We had one of the interviewees for the US report said that they had a one phone call strategy for the marketing team. Like
Yes.
the owner that dialed into the firm, into the marketing team, that it should not be passed, or it's not my job. He always took the call, understood what it was, passed it to a colleague yourself, and then the outbound call that went from the specialist was the right one to go.
That's right. The way I say it is, you might start with me, but you might have someone else call you back.
I like it. I like it. Jamie, Matthew, Gillian, maybe you've both got service centers that kind of, do they help with what you're trying to achieve globally, and that the relay race that you're talking about, Gillian, around the clock chasing the sun for kind of work on these pitches? Do you have service centers to look after things like that?
Service centers, did you say?
Yeah, maybe like you might have, I don't know, Baker McKenzie's got the Philippines, hasn't it? And
Yeah.
Ashurst.
No, we don't. Interestingly, we
don't.
don't.
Are you in office? Is that how it works?
But conceptually, yes. Which I actually kind of, maybe I'm biased because I'm here. I actually like that idea better, particularly in today's world where we've just, come out of 2 years of sitting here doing this. The concept of service centers, yes, absolutely. That's something that we're gelling within the firm now, but they're not located in any one place. And I'd like to, thinking about what Roy just said, I'd like to think, no matter who picks up that call from a partner, the only difference might be the accent, but the attitude and the approach and the knowledge of where to take that call next within the team should be there. I'm not sure it's 100% where I'd like it to be yet, but it's kind of, never really thought of it that way, Roy, but that's how I would see it. You're not putting them through to someone in Manila. They're going to be wherever they are in the system. And I was just thinking about geographically the map of where people on this team sit. They're all over the place, from San Francisco to Dubai, and everybody in between. Obviously, a large group in London, in the London office. There's a group in New York. There's a group in Atlanta. There's a group in DC. I'd like to think the lawyers just know that they're calling somebody on this team.
That's good. Matthew, any thoughts on that at all? You do have a hub, don't you, for that kind of support?
We do. We have two actually. We have Manila and Tampa,
Right.
and you know we've got about 500 people in Manila actually, and they provide all sorts of a whole range of back office type support for the firm. But I think the way I look at it is making sure you've got the right people in your team doing the right things. And so we undertook an exercise a little while ago in our team where we looked at every single role that business development did, you know, from pitching is one, directory submissions another, research, events, you know, that kind of stuff. And we came up, I don't know, there were about 50 of these, and we plotted them on a graph on two axes. One was the complexity of the task, and the other one was the necessity of that task to be lawyer facing. And what we ended up with, classic quadrant, were two clusters, one in the bottom left and one in the top right. Top right being highly complex and need to be partner lawyer facing. Bottom left, low complexity, and you don't need to be in front of the lawyer. And what I've been trying to do is with my team, the business development guys in the field, they should be doing the top right. I want them highly paid to be advisors talking to and working with the partners. And they bring in, when they've decided and agreed with the partner and the lawyer what they need to do, they bring in the necessary support to help them execute on it, which is the people in the tasks in the bottom left. And that can come from Manila or Tampa or the central team, or it could come through technology, or it could come through PA, depends what the thing is. But I've been trying to delineate those two things and make it very clear, so we're getting maximum efficiency and value from the right people.
And Simon, I want to, on the question that came in, I want to make sure I address the second part of it, because I think they haven't, I haven't. And Matthew, if you ever want to loan me like 10 or 15 of those 500 people, that'd be great, thanks. But you know, how the responsibilities are divided over the BD team. For those of you that are more in my boat, where you don't have a large team and it is, you know, you feel kind of squeezed, we have really tried to use platforms and technology to expand our reach. Like Jillian, we just happen to be geographically diffuse, and we've leaned into that. So there's me and there's Megan McKeon. Megan has business development and marketing, and Susan is above both of us. We have a central operations coordinator. She happens to be here in Detroit. And then the BD side has 4 business development folks, and they focus on the industries that run across all of our physical locations. We then have a content team within the marketing team that's dealing with websites, social, digital, thought leadership, all of those pieces. And then what I did with the coordinators I inherited that had like 5 or 6 offices and were trying to do all the things, much like Matthew described, I sat down with him over the last year and a half and said, what are the things that I knew what they really loved doing and I knew what they were really good at. And it's so wonderful when those two things coincide. When they don't, it's hard as a manager. In most cases they did. So one person was the events rock star. And that was hard for the firm to say, oh, I'm going to one person, whether I'm in Pittsburgh or California, to work with my events. And all of those marketing people start with the BD side. So back to the overall topic of the conversation, BD starts with the strategy with the attorneys. They map out the plan, and then that should drive the marketing tactics that achieve those things. And then comparably as the events person, I have someone that's dealing with all the chambers, another person with the best lawyers, super lawyers, all those kinds of things. And then another person who's doing all the onboarding, and finally someone who's doing all the DEI and comms pieces. So everyone has something in their portfolio that they feel is theirs, and we communicate that regularly back to the firm, because I want to elevate those people up. You know, somebody told me once, make sure they can see your replacement, because then you will get other opportunities. Now, that doesn't always work out well for you in law firms, because they don't think that way, but I don't care. I'd rather the firm see that there is a succession within this team and there's talent being developed along the way, because that helps me when I ask for raises, further development, other things. So
that's really good. It takes me to our next couple of questions, actually. Maybe I can wrap them into one and then see who fancies answering it. But Matthew, you were talking earlier about those people and skills side of things. Do you think you need specific skills to be able to work in that kind of cross-border environment, to be adept at kind of adapting to those cultural challenges? Or is it something that most marketers can pick up? That would be the first thing. And the second thing is, if you're a junior and somebody offers you a chance to go and work in the New York office for 6 months, what do you say to them?
Right. First question. Most of it, I mean, I think we sort of touched on this at the beginning. Most of this is actually kind of principles, common sense that you could, it's just how you apply it. As long as you listen, that's the most important thing, is before you open your mouth, just have done your little bit of planning and research, and then you go in and you listen to the situation. Then you should be using your skills as a marketeer and working out how best to apply them to the situation, whether the person's in Paris, Timbuktu, or wherever. That's very simplistic, I appreciate, but that's my general sort of viewpoint on this. And to your second point, yeah, absolutely, go for it. If you get an opportunity to go to New York, why not?
Gillian, any thoughts on that in terms of the skills?
Yeah, on the first one, I'm a big fan, and talk about it often on my team, of the sales funnel. Understanding this marketing leads to business development, leads to sales at the bottom of the funnel. By and large, the salespeople are the partners. Our job is to fill the funnel at the top with great marketing, increasing the awareness of the market about who we are, what we do, how we do it. That's marketing, which drives leads, content, client opportunities that drop to business development. Business development is about building relationships with the client, understanding what that specific client really needs, and taking what you've been doing in marketing and plugging it in order to drive the sales opportunity. That's really different. Now, most firms aren't lucky enough to have some people, who strictly sit at the top of the funnel, then you go straight up business development. Most of our teams go between those two. What I try to help them understand is that's great. So you have to have good marketing skills, I think, to be a good business developer in this business. It's not true of all businesses, but it's definitely true here. Great. But at least have a discussion with yourself in your head. Are they asking me for marketing help? Are they simply trying to go out there and educate the market on who they are as a partner or a practice group or an industry group? Or are they asking me for business development help? Are they trying to narrow the funnel and really work on opportunities? Because I think that drives that behavioral change that they all have to have. At the top of the marketing funnel, yes, you've got your events people and your website people and your content. That's marketing. That's driving market awareness and leads. The critical piece for converting all that great work is business development. So you have to have some of those skills. But I do think people eventually, particularly when they come to the manager and the director level, you've found your feet. You're either an exceptional marketer, building brand, building awareness, or you're great at helping partners close it into a business development phase. Mind to answer that question. What was the question?
Well, my other question is,
you go to New York.
You did get on the plane at some point, Gillian. So
I did get on a plane. I did get on a plane. Yes, I mean, that's just my view. I mean, I think I've always said yes. Probably shouldn't have been so quick to say yes sometimes, but yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we've had opportunities in other markets that we've taken to our team and said, this would be a great move for you to do, whether it's 6 months or a year or something.
And I do have to say, I envy some younger folks. I don't like when people speak generationally because I don't think we can paint people with a broad brush, but I wish I had some of the moxie that some folks do at a certain age to kind of know their worth and say, no, I'm not doing certain things, because I do think sometimes I jumped on a plane and ran around and did certain things. And I don't know that anybody cared that terribly much. I thought I was proving myself, but I've gotten where I've gotten, maybe not because of those things. My mother used to say, I'm snapping my fingers to keep the elephants away. There are no elephants. It's working. So I want to say, to Gillian's point, I'm so glad she raised the funnel piece, because I thought I was the only person. Gillian and I came from other industries. That's why we think this way, because I a few times I said funnel here at Clark Hill, and I got from my own team, and they looked at me like I was bonkers. But if you can get there, and you never will get there purely cleanly, because you also have to keep in mind, this is going to spray the dumbest comment of many dumb comments I will make. Attorneys will come to you not knowing our language, and they will say, I need marketing help. And Gillian said it beautifully. diagnose the question behind the question, as Kelly McKinnon always says. What are they actually trying to do? And as you can educate them gently, nicely, without feeling shaming, going, well, that's actually this part. And it's important because and most attorneys live in that marketing bandwidth. They just want everyone to know who they are, know who I am, know who I am. And I live in that. I love that part of the funnel. But it's got to have a purpose. It's got to have a reason. And eventually you have to make the ask, which I know is a big piece of what we're talking about today.
There's a couple of things on that. One, Catherine Hutchinson said, saying yes is both our superpower and our weakness, which I just love. I think that's a brilliant line. And just a quick vignette from my own life at Dewey, Roy, to your point there. I used to have some of the lawyers used to write to me, "Dear Marketing," and they only stopped it when I started to write back to them, "Dear fee earner," as a response as well. So yeah, they sat 2 doors down from me, I'd like to point out as well. So yeah, I don't need to be labelled marketing as such, maybe not that much. Brilliant, thank you. And thanks, Gillian, for getting on the plane as well. I love that. I love the idea of coming in via Canada as well. I think there's something slightly different and special about that. We discussed it, I think, when we had the original interview, but there's something about being in that, it's dominated that market by a few firms. It's a very different game, I think, as well. Okay, so juniors who are listening on the call, please do take that inspiration. If somebody gives you the opportunity to do something differently, grasp it. You know, if you got a chance to jump on the plane, maybe grasp it. Roy says maybe don't. Grasp the opportunity, but stay local.
Be open to the opportunity.
Open to the opportunity. That's the one.
The things we were taught: dress for success, early to in, stay late. I sometimes wonder about those things that I put myself through, because I see a lot of young people not doing that, and they're doing just fine. I'm not saying take my advice here. I just live in some regret that I jumped through hoops that maybe were really stupid. I
love that. But it's just a life of experience kind of builds up as a result of that, doesn't it, as well? Okay. Gillian, maybe a bit of a sidewinder here. There's a lot of talk about recessionary pressures at the moment. Is there a chance that a lot of the good stuff that we've done in relation to greater consistency of brand, consistency of experience, consistency of how we approach our marketing would be undone if there are greater economic kind of pressures?
Well, there's always a possibility that it would be undone, but I think that's where, you know, the leadership at the top, from the top, really comes in here. You know, we all know this. Now is not the time to take your foot off the gas. Now is the time to truly profit from what you've been building and actually turn the heat. I think marketers and business developers are going to face greater pressure. If we think it's been tough so far, you just wait till what the next 2 years are going to look like. But we have to find that inner fortitude and confidence in who we are. We got to know our markets. We got to know who these clients are to be able to let the partners know that we're actually supporting them through this. And our value comes to the table now more than ever. We've been investing, hopefully, during the good times. Now's the time the test is put on the table for us.
You're applauding that, Roy. Is that what you're hearing from around the broader kind of leadership in the LMA community?
Yes, and it's also what I think and feel. I mean, I've been 3 firms now, and the first one I joined was counter-cycle. They were mortgage foreclosures. So when everybody was in a bad spot, they were doing really well, and when everybody was doing well, they weren't. So I was there as they were starting to implode. And they did what a lot of law firms do, which is such a rookie mistake. They wanted to cut marketing. They wanted to cut anything that seemed, extravagant, which tells me they never really understood what marketing and business development were to begin with. And I think we're going to, not only are we going to have to work harder to be smarter, improve our value, I think we also are going to have to be prepared with those talking points to say, now is not the time for you to cut overhead in this area. You need this resource. This is your megaphone to get the word out, and then also to turn that actually into revenue for the firm. But I think that's hard. And again, I might be in a unique seat, but I think a lot of firms aren't dissimilar to ours, where they still have those very strong voices from the regional markets that had a marketing person that was down the hall and ordered the lunches and got them golf balls, and they think what we're doing is unnecessary, superfluous. And their end game is they want to have that person back again that was just down at the end of the hall and kind of did cater to their whims. And I think we have to see all that, be aware of it, not be cynical, not pick fights unnecessarily, but be prepared with those talking points to say, be ready, add value and let the firm know that you are probably the most necessary operational area they have presently in this moment.
Matthew, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, both Simon and Gillian talk heaps of sense there. I see this as it is an opportunity to really show our colours actually, and to do good BD. It's been a really strange, for obviously lots and lots of reasons, last few years, but in particular for law firms, or most law firms, a bit more larger law firms, it's been incredibly busy. They've been very successful, and the partners have been very sort of preoccupied with doing their matters, and the BD has been almost been a bit of a sort of luxury. The tables are now turning, and it's not a luxury; it's an absolute necessity, and they need our help. And I think it's a, as I think Roy just said, we've got to sort of think smarter, work smarter. But it's exciting actually, and for me, going back to the very beginning of this, I said I actually really enjoy doing pitches, which I do. The thrill of winning is great. You can't beat it. And actually, for us to be at the centre of this, and actually to help some of these lawyers find new work in a difficult market, how good is that? It's much. I find that much more thrilling than organising a party in great times to celebrate. Good as it is, I think it's exciting. I think there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, it matters more, right? The ante's just been upped, and
Yeah.
It's like a bit more critical that we get those wins. Is it possible, Matthew, to say no in those challenging economic circumstances? I mean, I think you're a great believer. You never say an out no. you've got to have a different alternative up your sleeve. But is it still possible to have those conversations? What's your experience of those economic cycles in terms of bids that we go for, bids that we don't?
I mean, yes. So yes, no. Yes, it is possible to say no. Still, of course. I think we still need to be aligned to our business plan and strategy, and I think we touched on a moment ago. I think you asked a question which Gillian correctly answered. Is there a threat to consistency and all the work that we've put in? Yes, there is a threat, but it's in the same vein. We should stick to our guns about who we are, what we're trying to do, and obviously one needs to be flexible. We have to be in the business we're in, but the principles need to hold firm. And so if there's a daft idea of chasing a silly piece of work worth $5,000, we should say no, as long as we are articulate it. Should be data driven as much as possible, but yes, we should, absolutely, because we could be using our time better, and so frankly could the lawyers. We could be going after better opportunities.
Okay, I've got an eye on the clock here as well, so I don't want to keep you away from your day jobs for too long as well. Maybe down to the last couple of questions. So Gillian, how do you keep the process human across global teams? How do you keep the pitch and proposals process so that it feels it's got a human touch to it?
So it's got a human touch to it. So this goes back to, I think, who are those real connectors to the partners, the BD managers by and large. They're the ones who should be sitting down, hopefully face to face, having that discussion and bringing that value to the table around what they know with the client. This kind of relates to the last question too. I think one way to get around the no is actually to get ahead with the yeses. Now's the time to dig out all these lovely events that we've been doing for the last year. Our marketing funnel is fat at the top. We got plenty of contacts and leads from these great webinars and events that we've been doing. To make it human, get ahead of that, get that out, get that list out. Here's who came, who's been doing the follow-up with them, and give the lawyers actually something real. It's data driven. We got them to the webinar. They've been subscribing to our blogs or whatever. They've been getting the client alerts. Help the lawyers get organized, humanize it for them so that this becomes real about building those relationships, which is actually what they do. They think they're lawyers. They're actually relationship builders and salespeople. If you can get ahead of that, I think that human piece comes out. They know who you are. They know you know the business. They know you're good at what you do, and they'll trust you to help them through that difficult time.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. And this bit of advice is going to sound like a both self-aggrandizing and a bit of a day late, dollar short if people aren't in this circumstance. The past 2 years gave us a unique opportunity to sunset all the foolishness that tends to tie up resources. Because what you often say no to is, or want to say no to, is the thing you know is not going to work. So we really, because of so many of those things were taken away, literally, we built up heavily. That was part of the centralization of the team too, so that when we got to this point, there weren't the options. They were sort of shifted to another way of doing marketing and business development. And if you didn't take advantage of that moment, I still think there are opportunities to do so, to let your attorneys know there are different ways of doing the work. So it's not saying no. Again, it's finding out what the question or the opportunity is and saying, whether it's a pitch that's come in or it's an attorney that's come to you with a request that doesn't seem to make any sense. Are we going to get the return for this? Again, you have those attorneys that want to take every RFP and go for all of them, but some of them just don't work. And so you're going to take that attorney's time and resources of the organization that could be applied towards something that actually is going to win business with the firm. And hopefully you have at least some data. It's helped us a lot to be able to go back to that attorney, do some of the things you know aren't going to work. So then you can go back and say, you know, we tried 3 of those things and they didn't work. Now will you do our way?
Love that. I think that's really good. There's a lovely piece that one of the guys at Pinnacle's written recently about how profitability is everyone's challenge, right? It's not just the finance team challenge. And I think I'm a great believer in that angle of, you know, BD guys and the partners themselves, and everyone's going to kind of rise to that profitability challenge, and knowing what looks like it's going to be a profitable thing to pursue. That's so important to know at the front end as well. Okay, final question, and maybe a fun one. Doesn't have to be a long one on the time. But what are the biggest differences you see between your US and European offices? It's okay to give me a serious example or a slightly different one as well. Roy, you've got a European office in Dublin, right?
Right. And so, you know, I'm not going to diminish our European presence, because part of the intentional location in Dublin is that then gives us access to so much of the rest of Europe and sort of navigating the various challenges that have existed there over the years. But I would say, now this is going to be my cheeky answer, the people in the Dublin office are far more pleasant and appreciative than any. And we have a very good, we have a group, our, as I say, our jerk quotient at Clark Hill is really low. We have lovely people that work here. We really do, and very kind. But that Dublin office, my golly, anytime I do something, I just feel like I handed them, I was about to say pot of gold, which would be offensive to anyone in Dublin, but I really handed them something special. And I got to tell you, when you get to work with people that do appreciate your background and your expertise, and you get to learn from their experience and what they know, it's also been wonderful for me. I don't know the European market, learned it over the last few years, and my boss, obviously being from there, it's been very instructive. But you know, I know the American market, and particularly the Midwest region, very well. So for me, I like jobs where I get to grow. So learning the different ways that they approach business development, the work they do there, has been very beneficial. But I have to say, the biggest difference is they're just so darn appreciative, and that keeps me going.
I love that. Thank you, Dublin, for showing Roy the love. That's brilliant. Matthew, thoughts on the biggest difference between US and European offices?
Use of Zs or Zs.
Yeah.
And the 7 with the line through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I like that, Matthew. It's a good answer. Gillian, having navigated different parts of North America as well, maybe it's different for you, but some differences between States and Europe?
The serious answer first. I do think that the Europeans are further advanced in all the things that we've been talking about today. Like, they get it, and they do understand the value that this team should be bringing to the table. It's not quite that way in the US, I don't feel. I think we're still kind of bringing them along. Not really sure why. Could be, you know, the bifurcation of the market here. I'm not really sure, but I do find, you know, that the speed of which they work in the European offices is much faster than they're working in the US. Therefore, my team is on the ball for those European partners and clients all the time, even when they're based in the US, when my team's based in the US. So that, you know, get with the beat, get with the pace had to pick up. The fun things, and maybe again, you know, I have a large group in London, almost 40 people in the London office, in one single office, who are back in the office now. the level of sort of social interaction, which, let's face it, drives the desire to work together and to collaborate together. If you like hanging out with these people, you like having lunch with them, you like going for a drink after work, that's easy to do when you're all in one place. It's not so easy to do when you're the two people in San Francisco and the next closest person to you would be someone in Phoenix. But I do find when I bring them together in their small groups, it's contagious. It's contagious. And that's what you look for in the potential of a team, is when they are all together, is that feeling there. They actually like being together.
I love that idea of the esprit de corps, looking for an avenue to celebrate, go out and party.
Right, right.
Can I add?
Because we're not just building and developing the culture with the firm, we're developing cultures for our teams too. And that sort of guiding light, the guidepost that you come back to, oh, that's how this team is, that's what we do. Oh, we don't do those kinds of things culturally. I mean, that behavior is not us, this behavior is us. And I'm big on, they have to actually like working together in order to do that, or they'll avoid one another.
And I do find as our team has developed its culture, other teams have modeled themselves after some of what we're doing, which is probably the best compliment of all. But I want to add one serious point. As my boss said, the penny dropped when Jillian said that the European market is more sophisticated and has been in these processes. I think that's what lends itself to that appreciation. I feel, it's like anything. When you have the facility and the understanding of the work, you're that much more appreciative when someone comes along and is actually helping you and aligned with where you want to go. And I think sometimes when we get that pushback from other markets, it's because they do think marketing and sending out chocolates and other things. And someone like me or Matthew or Jillian are coming to that group saying, but I can do that for you, but I could be doing this. And so you're educating them about the new process while they feel like something is being taken away, and they don't yet know that what you're going to give them in return is far, far better than what they've had in the past.
I think that's right. I think a lot of people, just the lawyers, haven't experienced good marketing and business development. And it's only when they do, they completely understand it and see the benefits. Yeah,
I think that's wonderful. Okay, listen, thank you so much, all of you, for those brilliant insights today as well, and talking about these cultural divides and how they affect how we do business. I think there's a lot more. We could go on for hours really talking about this topic. I've no doubt at all. Some of the takeaways. One, I think it's a really good idea, if you haven't done so already, to read the reports, the US and UK reports, and come to your own conclusions about what it means for your life at a law firm, the lawyers that you work for, and obviously add that in with the thoughts that you've heard around this call today. Clearly, everyone needs to go and buy a copy of Matthew's book. He's got his eyes on the trip to New York, so yeah, that'd be good if you can help fund that. And listen, the Pinnacle series is one that we tend to bring together Pinnacle people to talk about what's on their plate, the kind of issues that are really up there for chief marketing officers, maybe others as well, CFOs, etc. So if you're ever able to kind of join the next one, that'd be great. You'd be warmly welcomed. And please do feel free to join up with these guys on LinkedIn, say hello to them, and thank you all of you as a panel again for being so generous with your views today as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.